Buonasera a tutti. Good evening. My name is Carlo Piccolo. I'm the International Relations Liaison at the National Italian-American Foundation. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Please note that during this webinar, only the panelists will be visible and all attendees are muted and have their videos and chat turned off. Throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit your questions utilizing the Q&A tool located at the bottom of your screen, and Dr. Mollica will answer your questions at the end of his presentation. And now I'd like to welcome NIAF Vice Chair International, John Calvelli. Benvenuto, John.
You're on mute.
John.
Grazie, Carlo. I'm honored to present to you NIAF Relief Efforts Post-Earthquake Norcia, a virtual event brought to you by the National Italian-American Foundation. NIAF is a membership-based, nonpartisan, and nonprofit organization. Founded in 1975, NIAF's mission is to preserve the Italian-American heritage and culture, promote and inspire a positive image and legacy of Italian Americans, and strengthen and empower ties between the United States and Italy. We are based in Washington, D.C., so we're very excited to host virtual events because we now can share information and engage with Italian Americans and Italophiles from across the nation, and even our friends and supporters in Italy. As a result of the pandemic, NIAF's traditional sources of revenue are also on pause. So please consider becoming a member of the foundation or making a donation to support our mission. You can get more information by going to our website, www.niaf.org. Tonight's presentation is made possible by the NIAF Relief Efforts Program. When tragedies and natural disasters occur, NIAF is an immediate responder to fund relief efforts for those in need. Over the years, NIAF has collaborated with other Italian-American organizations, the Embassy of Italy, and the United States State Department to fund relief efforts projects after the 2002, 2009, 2012, and 2016 earthquakes that struck Puglia, Abruzzo, Emilia-Romagna, and Umbria. Most recently, NIAF launched a campaign after the November flooding in Venice, the second worst flooding in the city's recorded history. On a personal note, in my capacity as NIAF's Vice Chair for International Affairs, I have had the distinct honor of spearheading these relief efforts, working closely with our past and current NIAF chairs, specifically Joe Del Razzo, Gabe Batista, and Pat Harrison. But our efforts can only happen because of the generous support and the commitment of our NIAF members and the entire Italian-American community. Tonight, we will focus on our efforts in central Italy, specifically Norcia in the Italian region of Umbria. NIAF has been able to help rebuild the education and cultural needs through the construction of a new multi-purpose community center and have worked diligently to rebuild the lives of the local citizens devastated by the earthquake by funding an ongoing training and mentoring program for the local medical community. But none of this would be possible without our special guest this evening, Dr. Richard Mollica, a longtime friend and supporter of the foundation. Dr. Mollica is a director of the Harvard Program in Refugee Trauma, HPRT, of Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School, and a faculty member in the Counseling, Psychology, and Global Mental Health Program at William James College. In 1981, Dr. Mollica co-founded the Indo-Chinese Psychiatric Clinic, IPC. Over the past 2 decades, HPRT and IPC have helped to pioneer the mental health care of survivors of mass violence and torture. Their clinical model has been replicated throughout the world. Richard and his team have cared for over 10,000 survivors of extreme violence worldwide. Through his research, clinical work, and trainings, he is recognized as a leader in the treatment and rehabilitation of traumatized people in their communities. What I didn't share is that Richard also happens to be a fellow Bronxite whose parents were immigrants from the region of Calabria. He has truly brought great honor to all Italian Americans, but especially all Calabresi from the Bronx. I want to thank you, Richard, for joining us this evening and for sharing your experience with us all. Now, let's watch a short video that will provide you with a bit of background on the tragic earthquake and our collective response. Immediately following the video, we'll hear from Dr. Mollica. Carlo, why don't you share the video? Richard, thank you. Please take it away.
Well, thank you so much. It's so moving to see that and to see the beautiful team and the local people we've worked with. I have to, I'm really moved by the unbelievable affection and resilience and commitment of the people we've served. It's been unbelievable. In fact, there's a long story, but they put aside a donkey for me next time I go over there because they love their animals, you know.
Yes,
So,
yes.
but I want to, first of all, begin by thanking NIAF, you, John, and all your supporters. NIAF is an incredible organization. I've been working with NIAF since LACWA, since 2009, when we first got started. And I can't believe, it's not often in life when you meet special people who you can connect with, who have a vision about serving humanity. And John Cavelli and NIAF is that organization.
Thank you.
So on behalf of the citizens of Norcia that we've served, the healthcare workers that we're very close to today, the Protezione Civile, the FEMA of the that we're very close to, the Red Cross, and our Harvard Italian team. You saw many of them there. The Harvard Italian team has some of the brightest and best mental health psychiatrists, psychologists in Italy working together over the past, since L'Aquila, to develop the new Italian National Trauma Center. Now, why is this important? Is that Italy, in spite of all of its disasters, never had a national Italian trauma center, because there was always a belief that the church and the family could handle any disaster. Now, we all know from, as we're experiencing COVID now, the COVID-19, that this is not true. Family is crucial. Church is crucial, but we also need to have a lot of people at the local level dealing with this. So I just want to, before we go into the slides, I just want to extend our heartfelt thanks. I just heard from Giampiero Rosati, the president of the Italian National Trauma Center, Dr. Sonia Graziano, who made the film and who's our coordinator, and our Italian team. They all called me up today and said, give their love and their deep appreciation to NIAF.
Thank you.
So complimenti.
Grazie.
NIAF couldn't be better. We're really fanatics about NIAF. We're fanatics about NIAF. And so I just wanted to thank you all for that. So maybe, we've been doing this work now 4 decades and started the first refugee clinic really in the world in 1981 when the Indo-Chinese were coming to the United States. And we have, I just want to say this, put this out there, that I've been working in Italy as a visiting professor since 1980. I was first invited to Italy in 1980 to give a lecture, and that was the great height of Franco Basaglia and the Italian psychiatric reform, and I was asked to evaluate the Italian psychiatric reform. And I as an Italian American, I never went to Italy. I always wanted to go to England. And then I was a Fulbright in England. I said, what the hell am I doing here? I got to go to Italy. And then I fell in love with the country, and I've been working there in Italy ever since. And I just want to put this out there, that we're from a poor Southern Italian family in the South Bronx, immigrants. And we had a lot of tragedy in our family. And I wouldn't be here today as a professor at Harvard if it wasn't for the Italian culture. The Italian culture, I owe the Italian culture what I got today. And I'm sorry for the phone ringing. Let me.
No worries. He's gonna take care of that phone. He's very kind. His kind words about NIAF, and I think Richard, those kind words really come. You've said them to me and to the NIAF community, but that love and respect really is mutual, because we could not do what we've been able to do in Norcia and even in Aquila during the 2009 earthquake without the incredible team that you've put together. And I think as Italian Americans, we want to make sure that we are there for the community, and that we're there to support our friends and fellow paesani in Italy. We want to make sure that the money is well spent. And I think that's one of the big issues of why having a partner like yourself there on the ground is so important. It'd be great if you could share some of those slides. And
yeah, let's go through them quickly.
Let's go through those quickly, and so people can see.
Sure. Carlo, if you could show the first slide. So I'm going to try to run through this quickly so we have plenty of time for a discussion. This amazing woman, John will talk about her, Dr. Rosella Tonti, here is the principal of the school in Norcia, and John will share his remarks about her. Amazing woman who basically saved the school, saved the community by keeping the kids in Norcia. She refused to send the kids away. Beautiful story, a long and beautiful story. And on the left side, you'll see John Pero, the head of the Italian American Trauma, the new center, myself, and then you have two representatives from the mayor's office. And so we're opening the building. And again, I don't want to say too much, but this building, never in my life as a scientifically oriented service provider, medical doctor at Harvard, that I'd ever think I'd be cutting a ribbon to a new building. And this came out of the brain of John Cavelli. Yeah, so this is something fantastic, that we actually built the first building built in the earthquake zone in Norcia since the earthquake. This is it. And this came out of John's mind and NIAF's goal. And we'll keep going now. We'll run through it quickly. And thank you, John, for that inspiration. You know. And here's the great, unbelievable principal, Rosella, opening up the meeting. You know, the celebration of this new building. Next slide. Look at the size of this new building. It's gorgeous. It's huge. It's really, we never thought, John, it would be this big. Yeah, and and there's two famous professors there, Professor Moshetala in black, Professor Gianpaolo Nicolai, who's a very famous child psychologist at La Sapienza. And then on the right is Professor Brunelli, Enrico Brunelli, who was the head of the Environmental Protection Agency for all of Italy. And his father, he was born and raised in Norcia. And so when this earthquake happened, I went to him, we're close, and I said, we're gonna do something in Norcia, I promise you. And here he is, this famous biologist who's beloved in Norcia because his uncle was also the bishop of Norcia. That's how things work in Italy, you know. So the next slide.
Yes.
This is and here's the center that John wanted. John said they wanted labs, and he said we need a community center. Here it is. Beautiful, isn't it gorgeous?
So Richard, I think it's important to share what other spaces are available for the community in the town of Norcia.
None.
Is space available?
None. In fact, we had a broken down building when we first went there. You saw that in the movie, little film, where we wanted to use the center for having a bus go around and collect the elderly and bring them to mass. And they said, number one, we couldn't pay for the bus. 2, we couldn't rent the bus. And 3, we couldn't use that little broken down building. So now we have a place where elderly people can have mass. or they can meet as a community, because this is right off the road. It's a beautiful, gorgeous space. Next slide, yeah.
Richard's dealing with his phone.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. I never had that happen before. So here is the here's the opening ceremony. You can see the captain of the Carabinieri is here, right here on the right. Dr. Palla, who was the priest, the doctor of the Benedictine monks, Sonia Graziano, myself, the principal, and then the mayor's office, and then at the very end, the chief doctor, Dr. Salvatore, who's the head of all the doctors for the region. And I'm going to try to fly through this. Yeah, keep going. And then here in the space, you can see all the fantastic young people. There were hundreds of young people at this celebration in February. You could see them all there. It was exciting to see these young people from the schools.
And next slide, I think, Carl, if you go to the next slide. Oh, no, that's Father Basil, please.
If you keep going, good. Here's Father Basil, who's the liaison between us, and he opened up, he was the one who opened up Norcia to our team. He was the one.
Go back, Carlo, one slide just for a second. No, in the opposite. Well,
the direction, yeah. Good.
Yeah, it's quite all right.
Backwards, yeah, good.
Yeah, there we go. Keep going. I wanted the slide with the background, Carlo. If you could just go one more. Keep going. One more. Oh, you're going in the wrong direction.
Wrong direction, yeah.
Slide with that has the background of the build. There we go.
There you go. There's the.
Yeah.
That is the high school.
What's in the background there?
Yeah, that's the high school. That's the destroyed high school. And that was, John, maybe you could speak to this. That was supposed to have been rebuilt a year and a half ago.
Now, how long is that? It's been 4 years for the city and the region to rebuild the high school. Unfortunately, that has not been rebuilt. How long did this project take us to do from ideation to completion?
About a year. About a year. Yeah.
About a year.
Yeah.
And this building here, for all the listeners, this is going to be one of the main educational facilities for the school itself. Without this, they could not continue to have classes for the students in Norcia. So this becomes an incredibly important part of the educational programming. And I think this is the moment to say a bit about the incredible principal of the school. As anybody on this call will know, having a school is so important for that sense of community. And I came with Richard. I went twice to Norcia, and I met the principal the first time, and she was, in a word, dismissive. She said, so many people had come through and had made so many promises that she just did not believe people anymore. But she had this dogged determination to hold on to her community, because if they had closed the school, the community would have died. And lo and behold, about a year later, I come back with Richard in January of 2020 of this year, just to see how the work was progressing. And I met her, and she literally came to me and pulled me to the side and said, I didn't believe that the community would do what they did. And I just have to tell you from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And it was so heartfelt from this strong woman. I mean, she's like Joan of Arc. This woman was not going to let anything get in her way to make sure that those kids got an education, and that we were there with her side by side. So I just had to tell that brief story to share with you that, Richard and I could sit here and chat about all the work that we've done, but she on the ground was the factotum. She was the one who made things happen, and we wouldn't be here without her.
Absolutely, and amazing woman. And trust is so important. The usual story is there's a disaster, a lot of news. A year later, when the mental health problems hit big time, we're going to have this now with COVID in the United States as well. Everyone's gone. And that's when Harvard comes in. That, you know, we go in when everyone else has left, because we know the mental health problems are going to really get bad. And that doctor, in the end, you can see Dr. Salvatore and Dr. Paula, they had suspicion as well. Who are these guys? Who are these Harvard people? Who are these Italians from La Sapienza? You know, and we have a fantastic relationship with them, really. Yeah, we develop. It's a, what did they say, John? Lavoro di squadra. Lavoro di squadra. Right. Teamwork.
Teamwork.
That's the motto. Teamwork. Yeah. And so I just got to end. Oh, I wanted to say something here. This is a personal thing. So there were hundreds of young people there feeling a little hopeless, and I could sense that, and neglected and abandoned. And so I shared them two sayings of my father, Italian immigrant, you know, with a tragic history, South Bronx, Harlem Italian, you know, and he, I said, my father always said, see reality clearly, but never give up your dream. The kids really resonated to that. But the thing they really resonated to was my father's other saying is, I'm going to teach you how to make an omelet without eggs. I'm going to teach you how to make an omelet without eggs. The kids love that saying. And then they kept talking about all the next day, you know, and they said, oh, I can't believe that this poor family from Calabria, my mother's from Amalfi in Calabria, you know, Sheila, you know, that this guy comes back as a professor from Harvard, you know, to Norcia. They loved it, you know. So this, to me, was one of the most moving personal moments of my career, you know. The prodigal son. It was the prodigal son. It was like Dr. Malika, out of the South Bronx from a poor Italian family, comes back to serve the community of Norcia. And the kids, I'm telling you, they went wild over these two quotes from my father, you know. They were talking about it for days, you know. And now I'm going to end, so we'll go to the next slide.
If you could leave us on that last slide, Carlo, leave that up. I think that'd be great background. There we go. Sala NIAF.
Yeah, and I'm so proud of this. I mean, this is, they were proud of this. And there it is.
Let me start, Richard. I got, our first question comes from Nick Cutrone. Buonasera from Northwest New Jersey. Looking forward to the presentation from Professor Malik and team. I visited Norcia pre and post earthquake and was invited by the I Love Norcia Foundation and the Bianconi family in 2017 at the reopening. The Norcia community has worked hard to rebuild, but they still need our ongoing support. Why is the rebuilding effort from a government support perspective such a challenge? Many residents and businesses are still struggling to get back on track. Is this simply a lower priority by the Italian government? Can you comment on this? Thank you, Nick Cutrone, CEO and co-owner of Vista Travel Consultants in New Jersey and a member of Gruppo Italiano New York.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. What I've seen, I mean, first of all, John gave us the mandate, don't have any money disappear. Right, John?
Yes.
That's right. Make sure all the money goes to the project. Okay. Secondly, I didn't appreciate how dense the bureaucracy is. I would have to say, I saw this in L'Aquila, and I've seen this in Norcia, that the bureaucracy is the second wound. The first wound is the earthquake, and the second wound is the bureaucracy. We brought in L'Aquila, for instance, $40,000 from Save the Children to have teenagers rebuild the homes of their parents. Impossible. Impossible. Because teenagers are not allowed to do any carpentry or touch a building. So this $40,000 was wasted. We couldn't use it. Okay. I proposed in the first meeting, paying out of our own pocket, a bus to come once a week, and the Benedictine monks will do the mass, to do a mass for the elderly. And the bureaucracy, the politician said, impossible. Why is it possible? One is you can't rent a bus because of insurance and this, you have a million regulations, okay. Two, you're not allowed to give any money as an Italian American to pay the bus driver to take the people to mass. And three, this building you're in, you can't use it. It's not safe. So I couldn't believe this. And this was the whole experience in Norcia. It was so bad at one point, I thought I would never go to Italy again. It was so upsetting. So just to end this little story. So I was with the mayor, the architects, and John Piero and Sonia and the whole team. And we're talking about this new building that John had moved us in the direction of producing. And we had it designed and built, everything was ready to go. And the bureaucracy came up. So I said in English to the group, I said, the mayor is not telling the truth about this. I didn't say it that way. I said it in a harsher way because I was furious about this. I said, he's basically lying to us. And I said this in front of him in English, you know, to the group, to team, my team, because they wouldn't say anything. So the mayor turns to me in English, he goes, Professor Molika, he goes, I understand everything you're saying in English. He goes, give me the form and I'll sign it tomorrow and you can do the building. You understand what's going on? The bureaucracy is killing the people, literally killing the people.
So just to kind of close, just to kind of frame that out, how much did this building in the end cost to actually construct?
The building, the whole building, I think it was a couple hundred,
Yeah, it was
€100,000. Yeah.
It was about 250,000 euros.
Yeah. Yes.
I share that number because we were able to bring it in on time, on budget, and a year before the public project, which hasn't even been completed. We started a year later and it finished it a year earlier. So it tells you what small amounts of money, relatively speaking, the impact it can have in those areas. But I think it's important, Richard, if you could share, we've been talking about the physical structure and you showed some great visuals of what we've been able to do and the money that many of the people on this call were able to give to help us build that structure. But a portion of the money also went for the mental health. And can you talk a little bit about that? We talk about mental health and post-traumatic stress, and people think about that in a wartime setting, not necessarily after an earthquake. It'd be helpful to kind of get a little bit of a perspective on what that means and how do we deal with it. And then with that, we have a couple of questions about the virus itself and COVID. So if you kind of walk us through that mental health issue a little bit and the impact it has on victims of earthquakes.
Yeah, I mean, we can all appreciate this because we're all in a war now against this pandemic. I mean, I've had patients die in my clinic and was dealing with hundreds of people dying at Mass General, thousands, just 4 months ago. And I think that the problem, and we're heading in the same direction, the problem is that when there's a disaster, there's a big public response. And then after the public response goes away, about 6 months to a year later, the mental health problems become severe. That's going to happen now in our country with COVID. the mental health problems become severe. So people do recover, but there's a good percentage of children and adults who have serious mental health problems, about 25%, that are really quite damaged by the disaster, you know. And the problem we have in almost every case, that especially in Italy, the healthcare providers, the general practitioners, they have no training in mental health. So what they see is increase in hypertension, metabolic syndrome, you know, which is related to high cholesterol and stress, et cetera, depression, poor sleep, insomnia, nightmares. They see all these things, but they've never had any training on how to care for these kinds of things. And that's what we've done in Italy from the beginning. We hosted big meetings with the civil protection and with Red Cross, the psychologists, and especially our main goal is to train the local practitioners in the area. Like in L'Aquila, we trained every general practitioner, over almost 100, through NIAF funding, to do mental health work with the community, because they had absolutely no training. They had no clue. And so we know now with COVID, with the lockdown, because we had this wonderful event, a week later, they were put in lockdown for 4 weeks. The kids couldn't go to school. So we know the vulnerable groups are the elderly, pregnant women, children and young adults, teenagers, you know, and people with serious health and mental health problems. These are very vulnerable groups. And so we send in teams to work with the local practitioners to deal with that. But I think it's, there's a lot of resiliency, but there's also a lot of people who are really suffering who could use medical care, you know.
Mm-hmm. John Caputo asked a similar question. Thanks. I want to know, how has COVID impacted this area and effort? I work nearby in Cagli Le Marche. We recently raised some money for the shops on the piazza in Cagli suffering economically with closures from the virus. So, you know, any reports from Giampiero on what's happening in Norcia now? You know,
well, we're just starting to go in because, you know, Giampiero couldn't leave his house for 4 months, you know, and I mean, can you imagine you lose your village, you lose your town. You're in temporary housing, and a lot of temporary housing has no gardens and they don't have any kitchen. And you're trapped in this house for 4 months without being able to go out. The impact on the people is huge. And also, can you imagine the children who are in that school, and they're going to go back now, they're going back, but they were using more marijuana, more alcohol. And I think, you know, we know well from disaster, there's a thing called giving in, giving up, that the elderly who have lost all hope just die from heart attack or stroke or whatever. They give up. And this is what we're going to face now in places like Amatrice and Norcia. I mean, I think it's, you know, for every, there's a lot of research on this, for every percentage of unemployment, there's a 1% increase in suicide.
Wow. You know, Richard, tell the group a little bit about the Benedictine monks. And, you know, the Benedictine monks were actually founded in this area. That's where the
Saint Benedict, yeah.
Saint Benedict was born in this area, and so the Benedictines have a special connection to this community. Tell us a little bit about them, and you mentioned about Father Basil, who's a great American. I believe he's Mexican American from, I think, Arizona.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, right. He's a great guy, and just you see him and your world lights up. Tell me a little bit about what the role they've played in helping keep hope alive.
Well, the Benedictine I mean, how many communities do we have where people walking around in a black robe with the beard going to the ground, are just milling around the village and are beloved by the people? Because there's in Norcia, in many of the central region, like Assisi with St. Francis, there's a great spirituality in the environment. It's intangible. And Saint Benedict and his sister Scholastica, they were what, 400 AD or whatever.
Yeah,
they started the first monastery for the Catholic Church, and the rule of Benedict, which is fantastic. So there's a great spirituality that's embodied in these religious people who follow a very strict prayer, meditation, very strict rules. That they pray at 4 a.m. in the morning, and et cetera, et cetera. And what they represented to me, because I had never really spent time with Benedictine monks, their gorgeous cathedral was completely destroyed, and some of the rooms you saw in the film were in their cathedral, and they were camping outside the cathedral, and they decided, without any asking of the bureaucracy, to go up to the top of the mountain and rebuild their church 3 days after the earthquake. That's the kind of resiliency that is absolutely unbelievable. And they have the most gorgeous church, simple, humble church built out of wood. You've seen it, John. It's absolutely, yes. And their thing was like, hey, you're not going to tell us what to do. We're Benedictine monks. We're out of here. We're going. And there was some conflict also. They were in conflict with the bureaucracy for some reason. I don't know the politics of it, and they really weren't wanted in the community, So they had to leave, John, you're on mute.
The basilica was completely destroyed.
Right, completely.
And the point about this simple but beautiful church that they built on this mountaintop, where the community comes together and they give faith and hope to the residents of Norcia every day. And I love the fact that they are resilient and they are incredibly entrepreneurial and used an ancient recipe. They now make beer, which, by the way, is phenomenal.
Delicious. It's fantastic. I don't drink.
NURSIA.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can say this often enough, but if you really want to help the Benedictine monks and the local community, drink beer. And you can go online and buy Norcia beer. And it's a fantastic beer product, but also made by the Benedictine monks using an ancient recipe in this region of Italy. So I use that as a free advertising for our friends of the Benedictines. But in our last few moments together, Richard, I did have to ask you, can we do something similar to what we did in Norcia in Amatrice? Giampiero and I went to Amatrice in January, and it was devastating. In Norcia, you saw hope. There were still some buildings standing. In Amatrice, I believe 98% of the town was destroyed. So it is a bleak spot. Any words of hope and any partners that we could work with there to do something similar in that city?
Yeah, well, you asked us about this, and you requested that we check into this. And yes, I mean, we met with the Bishop of Rieti just a few weeks ago, and he's the Bishop of Amatrice. He's the bishop of this whole region, And we asked him, told him about our project. He thought it was a fantastic project. He was going to support it. And then we asked him straight out, can you break down the bureaucracy so we can go out into the community and deliver good healthcare and mental health care to the people? He said, yes. So you need that kind of power to open that door up, because the Bishop of Riete said he will open the door for us to for a NIAF project in the area, So, and then we had another group working with the Vatican who donated a mobile unit for us so we can go into the community and find the elderly and find people who are suffering and provide services to them. And so there is, the Bishop was the key.
Got it.
There's a lot of hope there because the Bishop is very powerful.
Got it. So we will continue on that. I did want to, John Caputo asked, can Richard repeat the quote about the percentage of increases in suicides?
For every 1% increase in unemployment, there's a 1% increase in the rate of suicide.
And then an anonymous attendee asked, what treatment modalities are used in providing mental health services? It sounds like a...
Yeah, well, what we have, if you're interested, you can contact John or Carlo. We have our toolkit that's culturally designed and translated into Italian that we use with the general practitioners, and you could have that access to that toolkit.
Yeah.
And it goes through all the steps of listening. Yeah, it's everything from deep listening, really listening to people about their suffering, to then providing an intervention to help them deal with their physical problems. Almost all of them have nightmares, poor sleep, fatigue, some form of depression, and this can all be treated, but also, as John knows quite well, as NIAF knows quite well, building community is the key. Building community is the key, especially for young people and elderly too. I mean, we gotta use this building to put the elderly in it, to have the elderly come and meet, because they don't have a marketplace right now to meet. They would normally be meeting in a marketplace.
With that, I did want to, there was a question from Elena Biondi, which I'll try to answer, and Richard, by all means, step in, from Northern New Jersey. How did you prevent the money from, quote unquote, disappearing? What we did, Elena, was to make sure that there was a preventivo, a contract, a clear scope of work that was then looked upon by other contractors to see cost. Then we made a concerted effort. We never gave all of the money at once. It was given in tranches.
Right, that's right.
Therefore, there were specific it was a roadmap and guidelines, and they had to meet certain metrics in order to get the full funding. So what you saw in those pictures that Dr. Malika shared really speak to that approach working. We used a similar approach in L'Aquila in 2009, and were able to build an international community center there for the University of L'Aquila. So we've had some great success, but what's most important there is partners and having individuals on the ground that can make sure that the program is going forward. And is that, Richard, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, John Piero went there at least once a month to do quality assurance. That's crucial. He, in other words, he went from Orvieto to Norcia once a month to do quality assurance. John did as well, and I think the lesson learned here is the teamwork, the trust, building the trust. When you build a strong trust in the local community, like we have with Father Basil, the Benedictines, the principal, the doctors, they will watch your back. And in other words, the trust builds good business. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm not a businessman, but I think the trust leads to good outcomes.
Well, on that note, I wanted to share one last thought from Nick Cutrone, When I returned to Norcia for the reopening in April 2017, we received a tour of the Basilica of St. Benedict from the street amidst the ruins. The fireman who was leading our group noted that after they uncovered the ruins, the only thing that was not destroyed was the tomb of St. Benedict. As the monk stated, it was a miracle that nobody in Norcia died during this tragedy, and the fact that St. Benedict's tomb was untouched is another sign of hope for this region. So on that hopeful note, I want to say thank you once again to Dr. Malika for being such an incredible partner, and really a role model for so many, and a role model for me as well, someone that I've looked up to and learned so much from. On behalf of the National Italian American Foundation, thank you once again. If you'd like to learn more about NIAF, please go to the www.niaf.org. This is being taped and it will be on our NIAF website if you'd like to review it or share it with others, along with past webinars. Please think about becoming a member. And I want to leave you with those final words from Richard Malika: building community is key. We need to build community together. That is what NIAF is all about. So grazie mille. Thank you again, Richard, and to better days in the future.
Well, thank you, NIAF.